Hey everybody, this is Rydo, and we're back to another live stream of Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel and video game news. Today is Monday, March 27th. I think I may have a video still uploading as far as the beginning of the stream, so I'm trying to wait till the delay kicks in to see if we start to get massive amounts of dropped frames. There's network potential lag that could happen there, although it is also possible that nothing bad could happen. And honestly, this is an experiment that needs to happen because theoretically I should be just uploading as I'm streaming anyways. Like, I imagine I'm probably just maxing out everything anyways as far as the one internet pipe for uploading one video via the OBS, and there's still plenty of reserve for other internet stuff. Of course, I also have to play Yu-Gi-Oh! And just load the websites too, so there's really 3 or 4 different things on this one computer that are doing network stuff on top of whatever standard just updates or whatever's happening on phones and other devices all throughout my house. Yeah, it looks like it's fine though. Here we have a Duelist Cup survey. Would we get anything for doing the Duelist Cup survey? No, I don't think so. We'll double check. No, I don't think I particularly would want to fill this out, although it's not 2 things. What do you think of the event length? It was too short. What did you enjoy? Not really. Did you enjoy based on fulfilling certain requirements in dual stages? Neutral. 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 Somewhat dissatisfied. Neutral. Next. They asked these same questions. My goal was to make it through the first stage, which I didn't. Still don't know how to build winning decks. 1 in earn rewards. Can't get the cards to build the deck I would want. I'll leave that one unclicked. There we go, and done. Maybe that survey will help improve this. Apparently there's a new selection pack here too. You are Passage of the Sun coming the 27th, so it should possibly today. Which we do have enough gems certainly to open that. So why did I answer all in that fashion around the duels? Well, quite simply because this Duelist Cup, in my opinion, is pretty sucky. You lose ranks after a certain point. Probably, I would guess, after Duelist level 10. If you lose twice, you go down, and then you have to work your way back up. So, this is done, and I missed out on 200 gems here, 100 gems here, 100 gems here, and a title that I really don't care about. I did not make it anywhere close to getting to second stage, and that would have all been fine and dandy if it weren't for the fact that I probably spent an extra, I'd say 6 to 12 hours, if not a full, more realistically, full 2-3 days that I should have been focusing in on making other content, instead playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Extra. That's just not how I want to spend my time, frankly, is to have every month or every couple of months an event in Yu-Gi-Oh! That takes a couple more days. Like, let's face it here, on my channel I used to have 2, sometimes 3 pre-recorded games airing on my channel. And now I'm struggling to just maintain its scheduling for one pre-recorded game. On top of with the introduction of the YouTube Shorts, there's just a massive amount of YouTube Shorts, arguably far too many. Like, I saw one of the YouTube's Twitter things asking if you post 1 or 2 shorts a week or 4 plus a week, and I'm like, 4 plus a week? I'm stretching on 4 YouTube Shorts a day. Of course, what I'm doing is very different with my YouTube Shorts, and it'd be hard to curate it down to get down to just 1 or 2. Sniper Ranger's on the chat saying hello, Rydo. Level 16 is not bad. Yeah. Well, a lot of it may very well just be the presentation. Maybe they just don't tell you what the rewards are, or maybe they scale down the rewards a little bit better. This 200 really hurts. But I guess I got this 200, and I got these special packs. But yeah, it feels bad, certainly. These special packs offering you a collection of cards that maybe would have been useful in the building of a Duelist Cup deck, but maybe aren't really that useful. You can see this guy being something new and useful. That sounded like that might be a new sound effect. I would argue that they potentially need to rethink this whole animation, because it just doesn't really make a lot of sense to have the lightning. Sniper Ranger says, I'm about to leave for college, so I came to say bye. Well, hi and bye, Sniper Ranger. Have a good time at college. Have fun storming the castle, to quote Monty Python. Well, 2 copies of an ultra rare. Are these different versions? They don't look like it. Yeah, these cards potentially would make sense. Well, now I have full 3 copies of these cards, so I should consider. What does this use? 2 monsters, including a Ritual, Fusion, Synchro, XYZ monster. If this card is special summoned, you can target 1 Ritual, Fusion, Synchro, XYZ monster you control in your graveyard. All monsters your opponent currently controls lose attack equal to the targeted monster until the end of the turn. Your opponent cannot target monsters you control the special summoned from the XYZ deck with monster effects. If this card would be destroyed by battle or card effect, you can banish 1 Ritual Fusion. That sounds like that is a really good card. Let's see if we can put this in our deck before we do anything else. Just see if that really plays the way I think that's going to play. Yeah, I suppose if... Let's see, it was called Link Mail. Let's see what happens if we just type in Link. Far too many things come up. We know it was an ultra rare, so we can filter down to that. Link Mail Archfiend. Okay. So we'll toss one of those and toss one of those and toss one of those. and then 1, 2, 3. We'll see how that works for us. And that is probably the first time in over a year that I've actually gotten a card in Yu-Gi-Oh! That I've paid enough attention to actually read it or look at it and find out if it possibly could be a card worth playing. Which inherently makes an argument that the two highlight cards are the way packs should go. Arguably, it should just be like one card on the screen at a time. Definitely makes a lot of sense that each card would be in a giant depiction when you're opening a pack, instead of by default just it being really zoomed out. I imagine even if you were not doing what I'm doing, which is looking at a TV 10 feet away, if you had a computer monitor, let's say a 1080p computer monitor, so the resolution's relatively low, right in front of your face, just a couple inches away, you still probably couldn't read the text. You could read the title, certainly, but I bet you couldn't read the text to get a general idea of what the cards are. So yeah, honestly, if they just lost some of the lightning in the animation and just put the cards bigger in front of you, even if it was just a quick flyby where the cards are giant and then they fly around the screen and then they curl backwards and zoom out and then land in the same position, that would probably be a better way of highlighting the cards instead of having flashy animations that aren't really highlighting the cards. Just look at this as a final product. There's, even if you had 10 cards here, you could put 5 on the top, 5 on the bottom, and take up less space. If you were making this for cell phones, you could do 2, 4, 6 on the top and bottom and scroll down that way. Like, either way, you've got a ridiculous amount of empty space all over the depiction here. But yeah, instead of the cards flying up to the screen and being just this animation where you see the back of the cards, they should probably fly up the screen, then zoom right up to the entire frame of the canvas, and then fly this way. And even if it is just a half a second glimpse of what the artwork looks like, that would be better. The fact that this is as big as you're getting the artwork really sucks. Yep. It would be nice, certainly, if each card had its own little sound effect, but not really necessary. You could certainly have a sound effect for each normal, rare, super rare, and ultra rare cards, like in Hearthstone, where they say awesome super rare, golden super rare, things like that. Most of these cards that we're opening, even if they're new, are still very old cards, because these are the legacy packs. So I'm not imagining any of these cards would actually be playable. And if it's already been shown, I guess if I made an elemental hero deck, you might be able to play that. If anything, I really just would need to go and see what the current meta decks are, though. Like, it's fairly obvious that there isn't anybody playing elemental decks, so they must just not compete. And if anything, I think Yu-Gi-Oh! Is got this problem where it is very tightly controlled by its current meta, to the point where you can't play a wild and different type of deck. So this may be the new thing, or we may not have the new expansion. Looking at this really isn't a good candidate to open more packs in this way, which then just makes me question if there is a good candidate here. There might be somewhat of a good candidate to open packets on this one. We still have 13 days to decide on that one. Or open packs on this one, maybe. Yeah, this one's even better of a candidate, it looks like. So we have nearly 66,000 gems. 30 packs here, 30 packs here. Definitely doable. I don't think any of these matter, but it does seem like by default we are going to always have 2 secret packs unlocked. This may be an example of Yu-Gi-Oh! And Bandai learning their lessons and moving away from secret packs. I wouldn't be surprised if they saw statistics showing that not very many people are falling for the secret pack trick. How many tickets do we have here on the bonus packs? Yeah, enough. Alright, let's hop into Duel. Okay, for the accountability section, I pushed the rest of Shadowverse, which was going to air, I think, into the 8th month this year, as far as the last few scheduled unpublished episodes of Shadowverse. By Shadowverse, I mean the live stream I was doing when I was playing Shadowverse instead of this live stream where I'm now playing Yu-Gi-Oh! And on the weekends I was putting out on noon unpublished like recordings of them, kind of reruns effectively, and just having something scheduled far into the future. There's certainly a level of overlap there because Yu-Gi-Oh! Is now far in the future, and this whole podcast mentality really destroys that idea anyways. So the artificial goal of having something potentially air years after I get hit by a bus and dying, to reach that artificial goal, I am going to have to get regular pre-recorded published footage that airs on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday up higher and further in the future, which that certainly can be done. It will just take some work, a lot of work. But yeah, over the weekend I was just publishing those videos, breaking their schedules and putting them out early. So if you're following me on Twitter, you probably would have seen some announcements there. Over the next few weekends, I'm going to have the goal to continue down that path and do more of that, putting out the scheduled episodes for Yu-Gi-Oh! Next. And yes, eventually I'm going to have to make some kind of macro that every Friday, every weekend, I'm going to have scheduled releases of last week's live streams. I think that is definitely how it's going to go. So me live streaming live now, if you don't catch it live, the live video will stay up. I'm not going to spend the extra effort taking that down, although I'm not 100% sure that YouTube doesn't eventually take down the live streams and delete them. And they shouldn't, and they never said that they were going to do that, but you know, I just don't have a lot of faith that they aren't doing that. But yeah, if you miss it, theoretically on Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, there should be reruns of last week's, so you'd only be a week behind. This would be, I guess, in line with what you would expect if I was doing some other like separate website type thing, where I was putting the videos out on a separate website and then a week later putting them out on YouTube. That's not the direction I'm leaning, nor is it really a direction I'd want to go. I could see an argument for doing that if I became super popular, but you notice like even PewDiePie hasn't bothered to go in any kind of route like that, and you only have the likes of some Curiosity Stream people forming a cabal, and Linus Tech Tips having multiple different types of posts and videos they make, making it somewhat worthwhile to do that, I guess. But yeah, you are definitely going to run into the streaming service problem if every YouTuber tried to have their own side, like, special event. Although we may go to something like that too, because there is this possibility as far as like Patreon being a video hoster themselves, in which videos might show up for a lot of content creators on Patreon first, and show up weeks later, or be Patreon exclusives in general. But that's not what I'm working towards, nor is it really what I'm thinking. Like, I'm still working towards 1,000 subscriptions and 1,000 subscribers and the right amount of watch hours. Until that gets done, it's really jumping ahead, far too far ahead to think about anything else. And all of this change really is just because of podcasts, and we really have no idea if they're really going to promote podcasts or implement podcasts in a good way. The danger, certainly, of being a YouTube content creator, I guess, is that it always falls into this category of this is weird, why can I not summon the other character? Is there a way to check your deck? I guess not. Doesn't seem like it's working. It said I just needed 2+ cards. Do I need some kind of ritual summon too? I guess the thing to do would be to check this deck. So let's see related cards then. Link Mail, Archfiend. Doesn't seem like there's a spell or ritual to summon this guy. So it feels like there's just a basic element here. 2+ monsters, including a ritual, fusion, synchro, or XYZ monster. Now, is this an XYZ monster? This is an XYZ monster. So I may need 3 of these on the field at one time, which maybe means I can only summon this when doing something like that. These are Beast Warrior Link effect monsters. Arguably though, I would read this and it would say 2+ monsters and at least one of them has to be an XYZ monster. Is Zeus an XYZ monster? Yes, he is, so... yeah, I don't know why that's not working. We'll just have to keep on playing and try and figure that out. Regardless, we're winning. We won that victory, so let's move forward. As far as the rest of the accountability section in the warm-up here, I played more Prey Mooncrash. I'm very close to being done, I think, with Prey Mooncrash. In all fairness, I probably have spent another 10 to 20 hours extra playing what is effectively a completely separate and different game in Prey Mooncrash compared to Prey. And honestly, I've enjoyed Prey Mooncrash a lot more than Prey. But yeah, I think I'm probably 1 or 2 runs done. It's going to heavily depend on, do you get a storyline ending when you finish all the story objectives in the simulation, or do you get the storyline ending only when you finish all of the progress challenges? Because one of the progress challenges is to have all 5 of the characters in a single run escape with their lives, and that is somewhat difficult to potentially pull off. There is definitely one story mission, and it's only a slight spoiler to say this, where the character ends up dead seemingly no matter what you do by doing the story mission. So that you couldn't do that story mission and get all 5 of the characters alive. And in a lot of ways, the point system is possibly a little too focused on, to the point where I could see players doing really poorly and not having enough points to buy the time loop delay item, which is what you really need to buy late in the game, like to just reduce the level of difficulty as much as possible, and give yourself as much time as possible to let all 5 of the enemies, all 5 of the playable characters escape. A lot of it is also potentially going to be luck. Now there's not a lot of variety in Prey Mooncrash, and that's kind of a criticism I have of it. You could have definitely moved the entire buildings around, or moved rooms in the buildings around to make it a much more replayable game. It definitely is not anything close as far as a roguelite to something like Rogue Legacy or Binding of Isaac in that aspect. There's minimal changes that can happen. Enemies can be in different places, obviously items can be in different places. There can be some environmental threats, but the environmental threats don't seem to ever really block off your path. Oddly, there's like one place in particular where there can be damage or there cannot be damage, and you just walk around the damage. It doesn't mean anything at all. There's another place where a bridge can be broken or not broken. Doesn't really matter. Like, you can just jump over the gap, and you pretty much have to jump over the gap if it's broken. it definitely feels like if all of the time and programming and resources that were put into the main game of Prey were instead put into Moon Crash, you would have had a better experience of Moon Crash, more than if all the resources put into making Moon Crash were put into Prey. I think you'd have pretty much the exact same experience. If anything, Prey, the original game Prey, not the DLC Moon Crash, feels like it should have been a much smaller linear horror game with no run and gun elements to differentiate itself even more away from what Moon Crash is. And it definitely feels like Moon Crash has some beginnings of the ideas of almost a live service game, and thank goodness they didn't actually make it a live service game, because the idea that there's like standard, advanced, elite level weapons, arguably that could have been left on the cutting room floor in favor of, as you progress through the story, you just by default have more advanced weapons. So every handgun you pick up becomes an advanced after a while. Every handgun you pick up after a later point becomes elite. Even the elite level doesn't give you a fully upgraded weapon, which does make an argument that there might actually be perfect quality weapons in the game. And I just haven't unlocked that point. But yeah, with only 2 more quests, one is a storyline quest and the other is the everybody escaping being left, I can't imagine that there's more than 3 or 4 runs that I could have, and I may just lose interest in, as far as just trying to have all of the characters escape. Maybe that means I don't actually get the credits and I don't see the end of what happens in the main story, but in the overworld to the hacker who's going through this simulation. But that is really just going to be a cutscene anyways. So yeah, scheduled videos, we'll publish some videos, scheduled some daily YouTube shorts. I'm at the moment relying on my script to crash because I had about 100 YouTube shorts, and I really don't need to schedule all 100 to go in the exact same time slot 3 or 4 months in advance. So I'm just relying on its instability, which is frankly unstable enough that it is fairly consistent and it will crash, to determine where the stopping point will be. So if it goes a month or 2 months or 3 months, whatever, random chance as far as what is scripted. Inherently, I need to do a little bit more experiment over the next couple of months. And figure out how many YouTube shorts is the right number per day that is a reasonable number and balances it out. Figure out what those time slots are, and then reprogram my macro so that it has a general idea of what the time slots are and changes the time slots. So like one YouTube short would air at say 6 in the morning, then it would run the macro and change that to 8 in the morning, then it would run the macro and change that to 10, then 12, then 2, then 4 in the evening, 6 in the evening, 8 in the evening, things like that. Yeah, whatever the actual time slots are. And yeah, that may be doable, somewhat doable, if I run it in a different way or just put special code in it. But yeah, having it cycle through and have all the time slots balanced out within a day or two of their release times makes a lot more sense than having 5 different time slots that could be, one could be months ahead and the other could be only days ahead. This guy is taking forever. I don't think I've even been allowed to play my first hand If anything, I think he's probably trying to do some kind of weird Exodia deck. Just drawing cards like crazy. And where's the timer when you need it for something like this? This is a great example of taking too long. Yep. He's playing an Exodia deck, and if anything, I guess that's just highlights where an Exodia deck, how much work it is required to do an Exodia deck. Anyways, is you've had to summon multiple cards multiple times, and practically he wouldn't have succeeded if I had just one more cancel effect card in my starting hand. Which very often I do have a cancel effect card in my starting hand. Can't really guarantee every run you're going to start with a cancel effect, but a lot of times you do. And see, if I had played even Max C, which I don't play Max C, then every time he's summoned a card, I would have summoned the card for a cancel effect. Yeah, this Ash Blossom, for instance. Had that been in my hand, he would have lost. Because I would have just stopped him at some point. Probably very, very early in his process. Let's see, did I do anything else? It was a fairly productive weekend, despite, like, insomnia and still, and waking up at weird times. I installed a Tuya leak detector, water detector, better safe than sorry on that, and just threw the sensor as close as I could get it to where a leak might happen under my dishwasher, and possibly where my sink would leak if it was leaking. It did leak my sink once, but we caught it very quickly, or I caught it very quickly, and it didn't really do any major damage. It actually just managed to... Sorry, I'm chewing ice. It actually just managed to make a tiny little stream in the grout of the tile in my kitchen, and the tiny little stream just went downhill towards a bunch of Lego boxes that I had, so it damaged Lego boxes with a little water damage, and that was it. Which, yeah, not a big loss really. I've taken the step to starting the process of flattening all the Lego boxes for all my Lego sets anyways, and that is almost certainly just a middle step in my mind to eventually throwing away the Lego boxes anyways. Like, I have a lot of space being taken up by Lego boxes that honestly I could do something better with. I could try and compact down all the stuff I have. Yeah, right now I'm in my house. I have a lot of stuff that's sprawled out across 2 or 3 rooms that by all rights should be squeezed down to 1 room, and then the other 2 rooms should be turned into like guest rooms, and be like capable of being used by other people. And that is the long-term goal that I'm sort of working on. It does look like my irrigation system version 2.0 of just starting all over again it does seem like that has worked fairly well. Doesn't seem like the hoses are going to just by default burst open, which was the problem I was having at the beginning. I still need to put some hose clamps on there. I bought these hose clamps that were like custom make your own, and I don't know how to actually use them. They didn't come with any instructions. So I have like this really long metal strapping, and you were supposed to cut the strapping to length, and I can't help but wonder if this is a case where that would have worked only particularly well if I was making a very large strap, and that the angle of everything is just too wide for making a fairly small 3/4 of an inch type strap. I should have, again, probably just bought pre-made ones that were individualized. But yeah, had I bought that, then I would have had to pull the hoses off and then put the strapping on them and then screw it down. More than likely I would have had to do that. Maybe I wouldn't have, come to think of it. Yeah, I probably could have gotten away with that. I have slowed down playing with the Dream Home Designer app over the weekend. Didn't have a lot of extra things that I wanted to do with it over this weekend. There's still a lot of work to be done, and a lot of it's just consideration. If anything, I'm taking the next step and I'm making a folder on my phone just called Dreamhouse, and I'm downloading photos and reference photos of what I'm thinking I want, and I'm doing more research. Like, I saw this idea of a steam shower and I went full circle on that. I thought, oh, that's a cool idea for a moment, and then I turned around and said, actually, no, I don't think I actually would want a steam shower, because it looks like it's a nightmare to build. It's incredibly dangerous that you're going to end up getting moisture behind your walls by making a steam shower, and you really are just making something that fills a airtight shower with really, really hot steam, when you probably just don't want that, or I personally probably don't want that. Like, I don't mind a steamy hot shower. I think most people are fine with that. But going from the point of here's 97 degree, 100 degree hot water steam that you would just get out of a regular shower versus the idea of here's 120, 140 degree steam, whatever the number actually is. I'm not sure what it would be, but it definitely seems like it would be a lot hotter. And there is certainly an argument that between having a separate sauna room in a house, which this is all very fancy stuff that you probably shouldn't have in a house in the first place, I wouldn't be surprised if there is a certain level of people that become uncomfortable around the idea of living in a house if it becomes too fancy. But yeah, the idea of having your shower be the sauna instead of having a separate sauna is appealing, but I don't think you need either one of those. So yeah, in the matter of hours of thinking about it, I was like, yep, no, I don't think I really would want a steam shower. And that's certainly where this dream house idea is going. And I kind of encourage everybody to go with this. Like, live in the fantasy a little bit. Realize it's a fantasy. Realize that you probably would need to win the lottery, and that the odds of that are lower than getting hit by lightning 12 times in a row, or some ridiculous statistic like that. But knowing what you want, and then being able to start to think about what you could actually afford and compromise later is more helpful. Inherently, people buy houses in a rush and they just don't have time to think it through, and usually they're buying a used house anyway, so it's just like you're not given every opportunity that you would like. You're given like 5 to 12 houses that are being shown to you at most. Let's see, can we summon the other guy from this point? No. So yeah, having a plan and just thinking about what you possibly would want, I think does make a lot of sense. Even if you're not actually going to get it. But I also am just going to specifically start to slow down on that process, and that's a good move. Anyways, I didn't need yet another app that I was just playing around and goofing around with. That in that same vein, I'm also kind of reluctant to buy something like House Flipper and cover that, because there is a level of dishonesty, I think, in the way some of the House Flipper coverage is shown on YouTube, in that they're doing montages and they're cutting out content, actual gameplay, that nobody is really making long plays, fully unedited long plays of House Flipper, because there is just a lot of repetition and like bad, boring gameplay element to it. And honestly, I don't think House Flipper has an export mode as far as house designs, or a construct from scratch mode. Maybe House Flipper 2 might have some more of that, and I don't think it really, at the moment, is the best software that you would use. It may not be the worst software ever, certainly, and it may have the potential of becoming the best software, because inherently, if you are a house designing app not sold on Steam, not sold as a game, you probably are going to get considerably less sales than if you took that exact same app and put it on Steam and sold it as a video game. Do I have anything else to talk about, though, as far as the accountability section? No. Notably, I am avoiding talking about the cosplay. That's been taking too much time. But I will point out that apparently Ghostwire Tokyo has its first year anniversary from Tango Gameworks. This is owned by ZeniMax, Bethesda being a sister company. The creator of Downfall, the cat lady Lorelei, has apparently had his Twitter stolen, hacked for 2 weeks, although in fairness, it doesn't seem to me like anybody was posting anything there. Certainly didn't catch my attention as far as saying anything weird. Apparently March 25th, or around March, is when a lot of the first quarter games get released every year, because it is also the 1 year anniversary for Tiny Tina's Wonderlands. Let's see. Summon this. Activate this. Summon this. Put this here. So, at the moment, we could summon this and win. So let's start with that. This is gonna be a lot of work. Send that to the graveyard, I guess. Get rid of the question as far as the trap. Probably don't have a way of dismissing more things. We could summon another one of those. That wouldn't be good enough though. Select more materials, we'll say no on that case. This guy should be here. So now at this point, seems like we could do this. So let's do it. We need an XYZ, and then that, and then that, and that. Apparently that became 4. Let's see. Add this to my hand, I guess. That did not work. Suffice it to say, that did not work. Special summoned. Target one you control in the graveyard, all monsters. I guess it wasn't special summoned. I may not even have an extra XYZ card in here to protect this guy, so. So suffice it to say, I boned that up. Let's cancel his ability. So yeah, not really a lot to say. Tiny Tina's Wonderlands dropped a year ago, and this is from 2K saying that. And then 2K also says that BioShock Infinite released 10 years ago today. This was the next day, I guess. So 1 day off. And yeah, Booker and Elizabeth, forever an iconic duo. I don't even recognize this person as Booker, and frankly this doesn't really look like Elizabeth either in the game. Like, the graphics are considerably more cartoony and worse than wherever they made this image from. I don't really feel like they are an iconic duo. Like, I think they're impactful characters, but I don't know if they stand for much of anything, because I don't feel like Bioshock Infinite stands for much of anything other than that initial surprise twist. Alright, so we only have 3 here, so we're going to have to make a choice. And I think the choice probably is to summon this first. Then don't activate it. Then summon this. And then activate this. And hope this works. I can't activate this card because I'd run out of cards. This guy's taking his sweet time, but I don't know if there's anything he can do. And if there is something he could do, I hope I can activate this, but not getting an Ash Blossom prompt, we're not getting this trigger prompt. We'll try and negate that ability. It's probably too late. And this banish ability. Alright, so I'm gonna just set this card since it's useless to me anyways, and attack directly, and then hope that Zeus can save the day. See, I'm compared to the guy who was taking forever to summon Exodia, I'm somehow running out of time here. That it just does not feel fair, as far as sometimes the opponent seems to be given a ton of time. Perhaps that's a case where the opponents are actually playing very fast, and then for some silly reason the game is slowing down the way it depicts the animations, and making it seem slower. Anyways, let's start going through the video game news. Video Games Chronicles says the God of War Ragnarok console bundle has been discounted by 50%. I have definitely seen that as a listing. It is probably never going to be a better time, and for a while at least, to buy a PlayStation 5 and get God of War Ragnarok for free. I can't imagine there being a bigger sale, certainly. The thing I would like to get is a 4K UHD Blu-ray player, and I am not certain that that is something you can get in a PlayStation 5. Like, when fairly obviously that should be the case. And $500 potentially for a PlayStation 5 to be a 4K Blu-ray player would be nice. Can't really justify owning a 4K Blu-ray player. I'm kind of a step behind where I need to find a good TV that's a 4K TV first. And the one cheap TV that I got that's very big is not really bright enough for the room that it's in. Speaking of likely not being bright enough, there was a projector on sale that sale probably is done now for like $130, which you really need a dark room if you're going to even begin to try to use a projector. Like, it may sound crazy, but the first step towards having a projector in your house is to have shades, probably electronic lampshades. And smart home lampshade stuff is uh, not particularly fast or quiet, and that's kind of what you would want there. Um, Alright, well, I don't know if we can win here. If anything was going to do it, it would be this card. We are just 1 for 1. Whatever card he draws gives him an opportunity to win. Whatever card I draw gives me an opportunity to win. Let's see. Before he does his trick, let's do my trick. This one, guess going forward you probably want less of these kinds of cards. I really just don't have time to even make a choice. In all seriousness, though, if this card can't be banished with this ability, or this ability for some reason does not activate, then I would have always lost anyways. And bringing back these cards to the graveyard gives me their abilities again. Think I may have it here, but maybe not. He may still have some strategy. With the smart water leak detector, there's not a lot to say about it. It's an incredibly simplistic smart device. It runs off 2 AAA batteries. I tried to buy this separate thing that arrived literally broken. So now I'm waiting for a replacement that would replace the batteries with an outlet plug. There's really not a reason to not have it use an outlet plug. You are spending potentially $15 just to avoid changing batteries, which that certainly is crazy and silly, yes, but it's not the craziest and silliest of things ever. But yeah, if the power is out and then my Wi-Fi is out, and so even if some of the devices are on battery, they wouldn't be able to connect to the Wi-Fi. Anyways, and just changing battery is an interesting idea to experiment with. But all it has is a does it since water or not alarm and a low battery alarm. It doesn't even have a speaker built into it, so you're fully integrated into the online aspect of it. It's incredibly cheap circuit board put in the exact same case as they would have put into a door sensor and connector And frankly, it is literally probably the exact same circuit board as a door sensor connector, and they've just wired a water resistance sensor to two test points instead of a magnet sensor to the same two test points. And then they programmed it a little bit differently. It really is a prime example of where good programming works well and bad programming can make a Tuya smart device completely unusable. Thank goodness they're cheap, and Amazon has a fairly generous return policy. Otherwise, I would have 4 to 6 devices. As I'm still playing around with my alarm clock, it did occur to me that since I have an adjustable electric bed, I could put a power monitor on that, and then anytime there was a power draw, that could be a signal that I've woken up, or more realistically, a scenario where you have kids upstairs, and when they would potentially move the bed to get out of bed, that would indicate that they've woken up. Although, particularly when you start to talk about kids, they may not actually adjust the bed to get out of bed. They may be spry enough to sleep on a bed completely flat, even if it is an adjustable bed, and then immediately hop out of the bed completely flat. Which then brought me to the better thought of, you know what makes a lot more sense, is if you just have a smart light bulb, and when the light bulb gets turned on, that being the indicator that they've woken up. Because that has the extra advantage of, oh, now they've turned on the lights, there's no way they're going to roll over and go back to sleep if the lights are on, or less of a possibility of that at least. So yeah, I think monitoring in a smart bed, probably not worth it for the power monitoring, and the amount of power it uses as far as just trying to save money on using electricity is going to be insignificantly small anyways. It would be nice if there was a smart bed out there that integrated, but not really necessary. The only thing it would really save you is having proprietary remote controls that eventually will go bad and break, and then you're spending $80 plus on a remote control that really should only cost $20 to replace at most and be universal. That was a long time to lose. Yeah, ideally everything would be better, but the idea of somebody turning on the lights to show that they've gotten up, and then that automatically turning off an alarm clock, or being the only way to turn off an alarm clock, is an interesting integration. So I might experiment with that going forward. That being said, I really wasn't planning on even buying the water leak sensor until I realized, yeah, it would be way more expensive and way more dangerous to not have that early warning system now than to wait a month and then potentially forget about it. So I blew the budget a little bit more for the water leak sensor. And I definitely could use more of those. I have at least 2 more sinks that, yeah, a water leak sensor under those would make a lot of sense. There is less of an argument for putting a leak sensor near a toilet or shower. Like, at a certain point, if there is a leak happening behind the walls of a shower, you're never gonna find it, and you wouldn't be able to get back there without an access panel, and most houses probably don't have access panels behind showers that you could get behind and change the batteries. Plus there's no plugs anywhere close to toilets or showers that would let you remove the battery aspects. These are probably super low energy devices, so changing the batteries once every year or two or would be fine. But you do run into the problem of no device can go more than 3 or 4 years with batteries in them because the batteries themselves just naturally die. If we had some like forever battery technology, that would be great. Something probably involving keeping the batteries in like a oxygen free environment might work fairly well. Okay, how would we want to do this? I guess we'll just do it this way. But yeah, actually I have 3 sinks. I have a water heater that's on its own smart system that already detects leaks, so it would be redundant to have the system put a leak detector in the Tuya system, but not terribly redundant because the Ream EcoNet smart monitor is notoriously terrible. The one I have is notoriously terrible about losing connections. So, yeah. That being said, even if you add a leak detector, you still have to use the EcoNet to adjust the temperatures on the water heater. Like, ideally, I'd like to find a water heater that you could wire your own thermostats into it like you can Ecobee and Nest thermostats for air conditioners, and yeah, there's just nothing like that exists, or if there is something like that, I haven't found it yet. See, was there anything else that I should be talking about? No, I should probably have already moved to news more consistently, and honestly, I think even though there is a lot of argument to playing more of this, we are already doomed. Like, there just is not enough hours. Now that I look at it, like today's March 27th, there's just not enough hours that I'm willing to spend to try and move up ranked to get to Platinum 1. So this is yet another month in which they've thrown enough events at me, and I've spent extra time doing events that I didn't have time to play ranked play. They really are just making a fatal assumption here that your average Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel player is only playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel and is doing it much more often than I am. Let's see what this does. Yeah, who cares what it does? Let's just activate the effect and hope it messes things up. Like, I've immediately lost interest in this in this game now that I've just thought about it and realized that I have no chance of getting to Platinum. And we'll show that just to highlight it, but yeah, once you have no chance of success, very few people want to play a game knowing that they will lose. Just go ahead and activate that twice. And yeah. Ideally at this point he would just surrender. That's something I think I'm going to start doing a lot more of too, is if this is just wasting my time and I want to play, surrendering. Like, instead of sitting around and watching and letting the character summon Exodia, it would have made a lot of sense to stop and just admit defeat. not give him the satisfaction of spending the ridiculous amount of time it took him. Alright, so yeah, we're at rank 3. If we won 2 more, we get to gold tier rank 2. And then we would have to win 3 more to get, or 2 more on top of that. So if we could get like 4 wins in a row, which is ridiculously big, or the equivalent of 4 wins in a row, which would take even more time, we could get to gold tier 1. And then we need another 2 to get to platinum 5, which is where we'd like to be. And I'm not even really sweating the 250 or the 200 gems here. I just don't want, at the end of this month, to be knocked all the way down to silver rank 5, which honestly, that shouldn't be the way this works. It should be you're knocked down a couple of tiers at most. 3 tiers would be, I think, fine. So rank 2, tier 2 gets knocked down to tier 5. But you kind of have a very large reset here in which you're knocked down to silver if your goal's 5, and then you have to work your way up here. And by working your way up here, you're getting a measly 500 gems, maybe 600 gems. Yeah, it's totally not worth the gems rewards. Maybe if the rewards were bigger, that would be beneficial, but you're never going to have enough time to grind up to platinum if you always are falling back down to silver. And even if you make it to platinum, then you just get at the end of the month put to gold, and then you have to grind up the diamond. And yes, I know very few people are supposed to be in diamond, but it's irritating nonetheless. As far as daily missions go, I think we've probably already done everything. We do have 4 days left to do solo missions, I guess. So yeah, solo mission. As far as logins, we have 4 days left to get 5 daily logins, so I missed 1 day, which isn't terrible. It does mean I'm going in the right direction to spectate. And then lifetime things, we are just continuously pushing forward. Now, as far as the duel event that ended, I did get all the daily quests on that, so I did get some extra gems around that. Still are 18 levels away from being at the max level of 50 a year into playing, which seems kind of crazy, but whatever. And we still have a lot of cards challenges that just aren't getting there very fast because it's not the style of gameplay that I play with the one deck that I play. We've just never made it to diamond at all. Okay. So let's turn on the blur and make sure that's working, and let's start covering the news. Now, there's 2 ways I could cover this and give my opinion on this story. One is I could go in a direction to say that what the idea of believe all women was obviously wrong, and the ideas before that of women be crazy and believe no women was obviously wrong. But there is somewhat something in the middle, and arguably I think there is something about the way little girls are taught or were taught, because we're not even talking about how little girls are are taught now. We're talking about how little girls 18 to 35, 40 years ago, to even 60, 80 years ago were taught to manipulate situations and manipulate people to get their way, because they had no real authority or power, and they had no real physical power to get their way any other way. But yeah, there are definitely crazy women out there who will make claims that are not true, or will actually just straight up gaslight themselves. The phrase gaslighting is overused, certainly, but they will convince themselves in their own minds that something happened that was just not the case. We inherently, when seeing a story like this, need to relearn the lesson that everybody should be considered innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. This whole cancel culture idea has proven itself over and over again to be a massively bad idea. And, cancel culture as a concept were just called witch hunts before. And that's what all this really has come down to, is just internet witch hunts. I think the video game people, in particular, just game developers and people in the industry of video game development in particular, have definitely embraced the witch hunt more than most, and it is only really bit them in the butt. And inherently, the problem is people make up their minds immediately, and then they will bend over backwards to find any reason or excuse to not admit that they were wrong, or not give them their due. So, yes, that is, I guess, the best way to cover it. The other way would be to go on to a long rambling rant that doesn't make as much sense. I think I did a good job with the first way, so we'll stick with that. The actual story here is Chris Avellone apparently claims that he was awarded a 7-figure payment, so somewhere between $1 million and $9,999,999.99 after as a payment for actually suing somebody, two ladies, for making sexual harassment claims, which I don't think you get that kind of payment if those claims were accurate. That being said, in 2020 he was accused of the accusation saw that the multiple developers cut ties with the Jedi Fallen Order writer, and he's probably not getting any of those jobs back. So even if he got nearly $10 million in money, he's potentially gotta make that $10 million stretch for the rest of his life, because it doesn't seem like anybody's going to rehire him anytime soon. Inherently, I think at a point now, if you're running a business, you straight up need some kind of pen name style scheme going on. You need to have secret plans in your human resources documents that says, all right, this person is accused of this. We shouldn't really fire him until he either directly confesses it to us, or arguably we shouldn't even fire him at that point. We should probably, legally, you're in the best bet to keep him employed and just secretly have him work from home under a pen name, and just say you're not to come into the office, you're not to talk or email to anybody. All communications going forward will go directly through the CEO, and HR will be get a copy of it. I think HR in most organizations get a copy of pretty much every email that is sent. You just pretty much have to assume either IT or HR is spying on every email you send from a business email. But yeah, I think that's got to be the way this goes, because you inherently are going to have this problem where you have a non-employee making accusations against an employee who supposedly is adding value to the product that you're trying to sell, adding value to your company, and then you're listening to this non-employee who's adding nothing to your company, adding nothing to the product, and lowering the quality of your product. Perhaps there is a certain argument to be made that if similar accusations had been made inside the company and you had ignored those to begin with, then people outside of the company wouldn't have been making these accusations. Or they wouldn't be making the accusations outside of the processes of HR. Arguably, I could see balancing it out and saying, if somebody in the company actually does file a complaint, we should actually investigate this and fire the people before it becomes a hashtag #MeToo announcement on Twitter. In that scenario, of course, that's not what seems like the scenario was in this story. The public accusations, I think, are the things that companies in general are going to have to say, no, we do not take any action against any employee who has been publicly accused of anything. We don't take any action against any employee who has been potentially arrested and put out on bail, even until they have been convicted in a court of law. We are not going to do anything. There's certainly something, I guess, if you're arrested and you're not showing up to work because you're in jail. Inherently, this is kind of the systematic abuses, though, that have affected minorities in the United States in general, is that people get court dates for speeding tickets when they weren't really speeding, and then they lose work, and then they lose their job because they don't show up for work. There should probably be more protection for that. You get cases where people are unfairly arrested and thrown in jail for a couple days, and they lose work, and then they lose their job. It just becomes this ever worse system. Where you just cannot get out of the negative things that are happening to you because of one snowball event. Like, I really don't even really want to cover the details here. I'll just say Video Games Chronicle is covering the details here. 2 women on Twitter said he was an abusive, abrasive, conniving sexual predator. After that, multiple developers cut ties with the writer, notably Dying Light 2's studio Techland. Arguably, Dying Light 2 was a worse product. Like, it wasn't as good as Dying Light 1, in most people's opinion. Very possibly. It took him a year to announce he took legal action for libel, and then 2 years on, the case has been settled. It was dismissed with prejudice, and he says, and he's received a 7-figure payment, which includes his attorney fees. The 2 accusers probably should be somewhat named in shame. Carissa Barrows and Kelly Ray Bristol. And they put out a joint statement claiming that their public statements had been misinterpreted, which, okay. I guess that was the agreement, is that they didn't want to come out and have to admit that they were lying. So they agreed on a joint statement saying they were misinterpreted as part of the settlement. But there really is no room here otherwise. Like, there's a full picture here. Let's see if we can get it opened. Yeah. Fully, as far as just the best way to see this. After engaging with Mr. Avalone, we prepared the following statement. Mr. Avalone never sexually abused either of us. We have no knowledge that he has ever sexually abused any women. We have no knowledge that Mr. Avalone has ever misused corporate funds. Anything we have previously said or written about Mr. Avalone to the contrary was not our intent. We wanted to support women in the industry. And see, this statement really just proves the insanity of the witch hunt, is that people think making false claims is somehow supporting women. Like, the whole idea of believing women in general falls apart when you have two women lying in an effort to support women. In doing so, our words expressed our words have been misinterpreted to suggest specific allegations of misconduct that we've neither expressed nor intended. We're passionate about the safety, security, and agency of women, minorities, LGBTQIA+, LGBTQIA+ persons in every community that has seen persecution in the video game industry. We believe Mr. Avalone shares a desire to protect and uplift those communities. We believe that he desires a full return to the industry and support him in those endeavors. And then you have actual signatures and actual dates signed at different dates. Yeah. So, yeah. Every false accusation in any situation really just makes the whole situation worse. It really does not support anybody. So, I don't know a scenario where somebody shouldn't be fully exonerated, and I don't know a scenario where it is in any way fair that you lose even 2 years of a promising, one assumes, promising career, growing career. He very possibly did not do any writing and will not do any writing for Jedi Fallen Order 2. So there's another job. He didn't do Dying Light 2. I imagine he could have written for 3-4 companies in this 2 years. And it's not just like people are going to hire him back that quickly and everything will be back to the way it was. This will probably haunt him the rest of his life. Thus, the 7-figure settlement. And having a settlement doesn't really mean much because these two accusers, I mispronounced that weirdly, the two accusers almost certainly don't have 7 figures worth of money or any kind of insurance that would pay for that. They almost certainly are just going to try to never have like enough money that he could actually claim the money and put them into some kind of debt collection. A 7-figure debt, very easily he would just sell to some kind of debt agencies for pennies on the dollar, and it would, let's say he sold it for 1 penny for he got $1 million in settlement, just to pick a number, and then he sells it for a penny for every dollar. Then that $1 million becomes $10,000. $10,000 is not 2 years of income lost even. So he's not really going to get like a 7-figure amount of money for this and made in any way be made whole. His career is going to suffer forever. There will be some kind of asterisk, even if it's explained well in his history biography on Wikipedia. And there are going to certainly be people that just never hear the part of him winning and proving himself to be not what these accusations make him out to be. People are still just going to remember the accusations. A similar thing has kind of happened with the Rick and Morty voice actor, although in all fairness, this story is a little bit different there, in that it does feel like he was probably flirting in text messages and being perhaps too overtly sexual, almost certainly, with potentially underage fans that he potentially knew were underage. So when one accusation came out, and that first accusation has been, I think, dismissed and the charges have been dropped, the secondary accusation still kind of exists. Although I could certainly see him being brought back, it's going to be very weird, certainly, if Rick and Morty's voice actor, the guy who's playing Rick and Morty as a voice actor, didn't come back and you just had completely different voice actors. At a certain point, though, the whole Rick and Morty series probably could have been animated better and voice acted better in the first place. The writing is really the only thing that's actually good in the cartoon. So if they wanted to do a not a soft reboot, just a full-on reboot, and do all the episodes that they had done before with new animation and new voice acting, and that wouldn't have been terrible. Moving on. Counter-Strike Go smashes an all-time player count following the announcement of Counter-Strike 2. There is a Counter-Strike Source, and I guess technically that is the first game in the Counter-Strike series. I think that may very well have been the first game even released by Valve. So Counter-Strike and then Counter-Strike Global Offensive may have been a bit of a remake for Counter-Strike Source, and now we're at Counter-Strike 2, which, alright. Counter-Strike 2 will arrive as a free upgrade this summer, which I guess technically, since I do have the Valve, I did buy the Valve bundle a long time ago, so in all the Valve games, I guess technically I could play Counter-Strike 2 if I so chose. I doubt I would choose to, though. It's not really my type of game. Moving on, Video Games Chronicles says it looks like Dead Cells Return to Castlevania is getting a PlayStation 5 version. This would mark the first time the acclaimed roguelike would be playable natively on the PS5. So, I guess with the extra content, you're also potentially getting a native version of Dead Cells in general. There really isn't a lot of news today, this Monday. It's not super surprising that there wouldn't be a lot of news over the weekend. God of War actor has reportedly said Ragnarok isn't the last you've seen of Tyr. So Ben Prendergast made a statement at PAX East, it's claimed. Which, yeah. Never believe voice actors about anything, really. That's what we were getting down to, is like they don't know and they don't say. I could certainly see the voice actor implying that he'll just play the character Tyr in some other game, or that he would do the voice in some other way. Particularly when you have like Cameo as an option nowadays, you could easily redo any character on Cameo at any point. I mean, unless there was some weird exclusivity where you could only play this character for God of War. But yeah, half the time it feels like these voice actors are saying that they're coming back to the next game, just to try and force the directors to actually hire them again for the next game. Inherently, this creates a weird situation as far as where is there even going to be a God of War 3 in this series, because they'd mostly implied that it was just going to be God of War reboot, and God of War Ragnarok, and then they were going to potentially just reboot it again after 2 games, which potentially that is a way to go instead of the forced trilogy system that we see for so many games, where the 3rd game almost always is not as good as the 1st or 2nd game. Generally speaking, the 1st game is usually pretty good, the sequel is a little worse than the 1st game, and then the 3rd game, having to try to wrap things up, struggles mightily and fails miserably most of the time. You do sometimes have a scenario where the 1st game, like Mass Effect 1, is pretty good, but the controls are a little wonky, and then Mass Effect 2 improves upon that and arguably is the best in the trilogy, but then you have the major failure of Mass Effect 3. But yeah, we probably should just have sequels to games and then reboots and get away from the 3 3rd game in a trilogy. Anyways, or even get to the point where every game stands alone and every game comes out so infrequently away from every other game. That's kind of like how the Sherlock Holmes stories, I believe, came out, is that those Sherlock Holmes stories often had large breaks in between them. Of course, you don't want to get into like a Game of Thrones situation where there's massively long breaks between books. That's not the way to do it. But I could see games certainly waiting 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 years in between each release. Of course, technology moves ahead so fast that had the God of War reboot happened and then nothing for 5 years, then Ragnarok came out, Ragnarok would have looked completely different, and it would have felt very awkward. It's probably too late, but Video Games Chronicles has an article here. Here's the exact time that the Wii U and 3DS eShops closed down today. Yeah, Pacific Daylight Time is 5 p.m. today, so I guess maybe there's a little bit more time. Eastern Daylight Time, 8 p.m. Honestly, these are just different time zones. And then on March 28th, 1 a.m. Greenwich Median Time, or Mean Time, I'm not sure which one it is nowadays, is 1 a.m. But yeah. This is inherently one of those scenarios, though, where we are only teaching Nintendo that it is acceptable to shut down the eShops by encouraging people to buy games on these eShops in the first place. It is really this catch-22 in which the boycott does not work for video games. And I'm not sure the boycott really works for anything so much, because you really have to just either have some level of patriotism as a reason why you're boycotting something, or some real anger and a grudge that you can hold as far as a boycott goes. Because particularly in video games, people want to play the games. And so people tend to hear a game is not going to be available for purchase, and instead of saying we're going to boycott this because you're removing it from sale, and then you're inherently going to not support it. So when we get to Windows 12, Windows 13, Windows 14, these games will not be playable or easily playable. Like that really would be the time to boycott. Instead of boycotting, no, we as gamers tend to just rush to buy the game and own it. And honestly, even as gamers, we're not that willing to take the piracy route because it's just too dangerous and too difficult. Plus, nobody really can have true and accurate numbers as far as how often a game has been pirated. So you'd basically have to pirate the game and then go on Twitter and out yourself and admit that you pirated the game because of it being on sale. And Nintendo wouldn't hear that message at all. They just hear piracy and go, well, we need to put more DRM in and we need to sue these people who are pirating our games. they would not get the message that, oh, you've removed this from sale, so there's no way to own it, so we're going to pirate it. Nintendo and Japanese companies in general just do not hear messages that they don't want to hear. It's a whole system designed where if a low-level employee could add any insight or send the message that people are upset about a game shop being shut down, they wouldn't tell their boss, and their boss wouldn't tell their boss, so it's never going to get to the CEO. It's always just a lot of glad handing and yes man stuff, more in Japanese companies than I think in American companies, where there is a lot of glad handing and yes man stuff going on too. Companies in general, the internal infrastructure of companies is a lot of it's built around lying to yourself and dishonesty and not having true feedback from employees. Almost every survey is written by a survey company to get the outcome that they wanted before they even put this survey out. Moving on, Microsoft's long-running $1 Xbox Game Pass trial offer has been stopped. The company is evaluating different marketing promotions. I don't know. I never even knew about this. The offer, which has been running for a number of years, let players try out Xbox Game Pass, Xbox Game Pass Ultimate, or PC Game Pass for a month for $1. After the period, the players were able to either cancel their subscription or continue at the standard price. Honestly, $1 is probably the minimum you could do for any kind of transaction, but it just doesn't really make a lot of sense that you would do that. Like, generally speaking, if you see an offer that is designed to just be the lowest, it's $4.99, not $1 even. And the actual monthly price for Xbox Game Pass probably is much closer to $4.99 than $1. I bet the lowest Game Pass is probably somewhere around $9.99 a month without actually knowing the prices, which they would be very helpful if they did tell me the actual prices. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if the basic Game Pass is $9.99 a month, which is not a terrible price considering you're getting 4 or 5 free games each month, even if they're not games you specifically want. Plus, you're getting access to a lot of a library of older games. 4 or 5 new games added to a library. Game Pass Ultimate, I think, gives you newer games as a service, and I wouldn't be surprised if that's $19.99 a month, which may be a little expensive. Let's see what we should do here, and since we've got some free time, is just see what the price is. Right. See if they mention the price anywhere here. Okay, here we go. So, yeah, the console price is $9.99 a month, and the PC version is the same price, but seems to include EA Play, where the other one does not, which maybe there's not much of a difference as far as which games are available. And then Ultimate is $14.99, but it also includes Xbox Gold for console multiplayer. So you're basically just getting gold for half off and EA Play. It's not that expensive, really. So it would make a lot more sense for them to offer $4.99 a month. Even Ultimate, if you jumped from $4.99 a month that first month to $10.99 a month. Although it really should probably be closer to every three for the first 3 months, or even the first 6 months that it's $4.99, not $1 for 1 month, and then a major change. What seems like it's mostly exactly the same, except for the gold in the EA Play. And if you don't have a console, getting Ultimate really doesn't make any sense at all. Which I thought having a console or having a PC only would make sense to still buy Ultimate, but apparently there's no benefit at all for having Ultimate if you don't have an Xbox console. It is worth still pointing out that the Xbox PC Game Pass is going to have PC games coming through the Microsoft Xbox Store, not through Steam, and that potentially becomes a big problem. And certainly when you think about PC, Steam is 100% free. Multiplayer is free. You're not paying anything extra for that. To have an EA account, EA Play account is free. But to play EA games you own is free. But to get the streaming, the monthly service in which you get a few EA free games through EA Play, that would cost money. But overall, it's still very much cheaper and smarter to keep everything in Steam and pay no attention to Xbox Game Pass or EA Play if you're a PC player. Moving on, the first in-game screenshots of Avatar Frontiers of Pandora is seemingly leaked. I am always a little shocked that Avatar has managed to have any success at all. I would just think that the big blue people would never have sold as a concept, and yet somehow Fern Gully in real life, which is what they described the first Avatar, made its money back. I guess it just maybe does have some amazing visual effects. It's surprising people even know what visual effects are or care about them, though. I don't know if there really is room for a video game around the story of Avatar. Anyways, though, because that may very well be a very bad story that hurts the franchise overall. Moving on, Valve uses the Last of Us PC to promote Steam Deck, implying it's going to be verified on day one. The PC port requires top tier specs at its highest settings. So yeah, it definitely seems like they just kind of cropped the screenshot and put it here. Now inherently, I guess this could not be false advertising if you don't want to take it as false advertising, because the Steam Deck does support, I think it's called Moonlight, where you could just stream your PC, a very, very powerful PC playing Last of Us 1. You could stream the video and audio from that PC to your Steam Deck on your home network. And that could be very much what they're implying here. Perhaps they should put a little bit of text down there to confirm, to show this. Some games shown through using the streaming service, or some games not being played natively. But yeah. It's a little weird for Steam to even use Last of Us, even though it's a big game, certainly, and a big win that is coming to PC. It's a little weird, though, to use what was a tentpole game for Sony PlayStation to promote PC gaming in the Steam Deck. There is very possibly a point here where I'm going to regret in the next 12 months not buying a Steam Deck while it was on sale. It will be more interesting if there's actual facts here instead of an article that's really not saying much. This really just could be some intern or low-level employee just picked a screenshot and put it on their website, and that because we've seen that happen before where somebody put a picture of an emulator in their advertising screenshots, and then they very quickly removed the Nintendo emulator from their advertising because they didn't want to be seen promoting emulation and pissing off Nintendo, even though Nintendo has never put a single one of their games on Steam. Although I guess some third-party Bayonetta games did come to Steam, so there really is no reason to piss off Nintendo like that. So I wouldn't be surprised if this changes, but also this really just doesn't mean anything. If this is running natively, not at the highest settings, but at a reasonable like 1080p and looks really good on the Steam Deck, that would be better news to hear and actual news to report on. There is definitely an argument too that if games on medium settings are targeting the Steam Deck, and that's what a medium setting means, or if we get down to a point where games straight up have Steam Deck settings that they've tested out, and they're saying for this specific and unique device hardware profile that we know has been standardized, we will enable the Steam Deck 1 settings. It leaves the door open for Valve 2-3 years from now to make a Steam Deck 2, and the power increase you might get in a Steam Deck 2 might let you bump up the settings from like medium to high and get better graphics. Although there is potentially this elephant that's entering a room, not quite in the room yet, but it's entering the room with the in-real air VR glasses, augmented reality glasses. That very possibly is a better way for this to go. Instead of having monitors that are on handheld devices, maybe you take the monitor out and put it in a pair of sunglasses, and then you have a full-on tactical keyboard or input DS style secondary screen, or just a smaller device that's more handheld, or you just have a big blank spot here that lets you put a lot more hardware into it. I could imagine without a touchscreen, the cubic feet or cubic centimeters of volume that the touchscreen's hardware takes up would give you room for heat sinks and coolings of a twice as big CPU, a little bit bigger battery, maybe a quarter as big or double even on the battery size, bigger, twice as big GPU. Yeah. Once you lose that monitor, you also potentially have less battery drain overall, although the in-real augmented reality glasses would still be drawing power from that. And at a certain level, I'd almost like to see a system where you have augmented reality glasses that slide into the top of something like a Steam Deck and then pop out. So there's always a carrying case for them and they're always protected. And I don't know how you could make something thick enough, really, where you could fold the ears on augmented reality glasses down and slide them into the top of a device, and it really make sense that it's protected on both sides. But Steam Deck is fairly thick, so if anything, could do that. But yeah, that is potentially where I think we might go, is we might just straight up have VR glasses. Because you're never going to have somebody looking over your shoulder playing the Steam Deck. That's a fallacy. You're never going to have multiplayer games where two people are looking at a Steam Deck. Glassesless 3D technology could be a thing. You put a camera at the top here, potentially, and then that lets you shift perspective with glassless VR or 3D, not VR. That's a thing you could certainly do. Could also just see potentially a smaller device where the screen rolled up and the whole device just collapses down to take up less space. But I bet that would not work particularly well. Anyways, I'm kind of rambling. Moving on, Video Games Chronicles. Video Games Chronicle, there's no S at the end, says that the Silent Hill 2 remake is a, quote, poison chalice, according to the former series writer Sam Barlow. Sam Barlow previously wrote and designed 2 Silent Hill games. Sam Barlow, I believe, is also the person who made Her Story, Telling Lives, and most recently, Immortality. He wrote and designed Silent Hill Origins on PS2 and Silent Hill Shattered Memories on the Wii and PS2, so not particularly the biggest names in the series. So Barlow was asked about Konami's upcoming slate of Silent Hill titles, to which he replies he didn't envy Bluebird Team, the studio working on Silent Hill 2 remake. Quote, personally, I'm less excited about playing a remaster. It's also like the biggest poison chalice in video games, doing a remaster of Silent Hill 2. So, from what I'm getting here, is he saying that the prestige of being able to remake Silent Hill 2 is poisoned by the fact that there is just a massive fandom for Silent Hill 2, and that the fans are likely to not be 100% happy with whatever you do in a remake. I was thinking that perhaps he was implying that the Konami that he worked with in the past, which very, very, very possibly is the exact same Konami now, was just setting him up to fail with Silent Hill Origins and Silent Hill Shattered Memories, as Konami has been shown to do with a lot of games, since that they really don't seem like they care about them and they set up employees to fail and treat them badly anyways. And that is very much a possibility still, even now. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Konami says something nasty about the Silent Hill 2 remake if it sells millions upon millions of copies. I wouldn't be surprised if they have something nasty to say if it sells very little. I wouldn't be surprised if Bluebird Team themselves really is just not going to feel, they just aren't ever going to feel as satisfied as they probably deserve to feel once the game comes out, regardless of how well of a job they do. The quote continues, I mean, good luck to them. I don't know how you can do that without upsetting people. Yeah, he definitely is implying that it is fans that are the problem at this point. Although, yeah, it really is. You're stuck between a rock and a hard place. Konami could be upset with what you do, or just screw you over for no reason, or the fans could screw you over for no reason. And as far as Silent Hill Origins and Shattered Memories, I doubt they're ever getting remakes. If anything, the Silent Hill 2 remake is almost this weird side project that I'm, at best case scenario, Konami doesn't even care about, because they're pushing towards the other games. Uh, the version of Silent Hill that I would love, which it sounds like they're pushing, is that where we use this as a platform to have a range of interesting psychological horror games, and actually we can see a breadth of gameplay. Twilight Zone, those kinds of things, like anthologies, give you the sense of what you're getting yourself in for, but you're also excited to see different ways in which it can be explored. Of course, you also have to take the source for something here too. Sam Barlow is all about writing and not much about actual video game mechanics. The video game mechanics he's done have been very artsy and avant-garde. Her story, really just a video player where you go back and forth and type in some search key phrases. It's kind of a shame that AI search enhancement didn't exist when her story was being made, because you probably have a much better search interface if something like the AI GPT models were implemented into that. Although that is also very weird if you were to play her story and then you had something like Chat GPT making up the story as you're playing and lying to you directly. That would be very weird. That being said, while the controls were acceptable at best in her story, they really weren't acceptable in Telling Lies, which just tried to do her story again and didn't really work. And then Immortality tells a different story, but it still is mostly just a very simplistic gameplay mechanic, which is fine. He's a writer, so whoever's programming may be at fault there, but he doesn't obviously care that much about how his writing is depicted in video game form. And yeah, I don't think Shattered Memories or Origins were that popular. There is definitely an argument around what he's saying that rings of some truth, that Silent Hill, while it has failed miserably as movies, although they probably did make a decent amount of money, I would say artistically they failed as movies. It probably should be a movie or a book series instead of a video game, because giving the player the ability to fight back in any way hurts the horror more than it helps. At least it has in the past. Unlike something like the Cat Lady. Like, there's this whole sequence in the Cat Lady where you have to, like, cut off your own arm, or is one of the early sequences, and it's horrific, and you know it's going to happen, and it's foreshadowed, and so you're making the player do something they don't want to do, and that adds to the horror. Very rarely does that happen in other horror games, though. Like, even looking at the screenshot, you may be scared by this blob character, but as soon as you give the player character a weapon and he can just swing and attack it, that alleviates the fear quite a bit. And the only way to make it more of a spooky experience is to remove more weapons and remove control from the player. So yeah, they are in this catch-22 where if the idea is that it's supposed to be an anthology series around spooky things, the gameplay mechanics, we've yet to find a good gameplay mechanic that balances out scary gameplay. Yeah, none of the horror games really have done a great job as far as having gameplay mechanics that make a lot of sense. In general, having a repetitive, consistent gameplay mechanic, whether it's shooting guns or swinging bats or swinging a knife, like, the repetition there creates some familiarity where you don't want familiarity in a horror game. You would want unique, bespoke encounters over and over again. something closer to like a point and click adventure where in one scene you find a lighter and then you have to start a room on fire to escape, or but you don't do that over and over again and just throw a match on enemies over and over again like you did in Evil Within. Moving on. Another AAA game studio made up of former PlayStation game staffs has been formed. This time it's called Lighthouse Games, and it's led by the Forza Horizon Studios co-founder Gavin Rayburn. I guess I probably haven't seen a lot of PlayStation people leaving to form their own company, but it does seem like particularly UK PlayStation games may have been in the UK and that may have been shut down in favor of consolidating all focus and power in PlayStation Sony of California. So yeah, I doubt this Lighthouse Games based in Leamington Spa, which is the same town where Playground Games is located. Yeah, I doubt this is people that moved to the UK. The team says they're currently working on an as yet unannounced AAA game featuring a brand new IP, which basically means nothing. Yeah, I don't think I have too much more to say there, other than it does seem like we may get to a point where there's more companies in the UK that make video games to the point where it seems like the UK video game industry is a bigger thing than it has seemed like it was in the past. There was very possibly too much consolidation in the UK. At a certain level, though, it's always going to be somewhat of a small thing. Like, even 20 small companies in the UK, I don't think is going to really compete with all of Europe or all of the United States or all of Japan. Not for a while, at least. And they have to actually make games that make a name for each of these new companies. Let's see. Moving on, Nintendo of Europe is offering a free 7-day trial of Switch Online. So I guess if you're in Europe, check that out. And then our last Video Games Chronicle article for today says Zelda Tears of the Kingdom is getting a new 10-minute gameplay video this week. Nintendo will debut new footage on Tuesday. Do we really need new footage? I don't know. The question certainly I want to ask, though, is who the heck is this guy? I have no idea. Like, this definitely isn't Shigeru Miyamoto unless they've just changed their appearance drastically. And this isn't the Nintendo of America Doug Bowser unless he is literally doing Asian face. So I just have no clue who this person is. Is there a way to search an image? Let's see. Okay, here it says here. Join the series producer E.G. Aonuma. I guess that's how you pronounce that. For roughly 10 minutes of gameplay. I've never heard of this name related to Nintendo Zelda before. I've never seen this face. So this seems like the bigger news here is that they are putting someone out as the face of Tears of the Kingdom, either to be the face of failure or to be the face of success to take over. I assume Shigeru Miyamoto is being more of a Mario guy, may not be that involved, but I feel like he probably should have been involved more. Almost certainly it feels like Doug Bowser or the Japanese um, CEO of Nintendo, president of Nintendo, should have shown up, but he seemingly does not want to be on camera, which is fair enough. So we've got like a new face. Now, the problem, of course, as far as the new and fresh faces in Japanese business, is they aren't really new or fresh faces. This person, at best, just looks very old for a Japanese person and is in his mid 50s. At worst, this guy is 60, 75 years plus, even older, possibly. So, yeah, these hardly are fresh out of college Japanese employees doing the presentations. On the other hand, I guess it would be fairly annoying, though, if they brought in, say, a VTuber or a probably not a cosplayer, but a idol. Yeah, some kind of idol person to do presentations. That's certainly a way this could have gone, in that they could have had somebody in a costume as Link, a cosplayer as Link, doing the presentations instead, or bringing on idols as just official presenters for Nintendo. And even in the Japanese presentations, they don't really bother with any of that. They're much more business-like around it. And I would prefer to hear from actual people who are involved in the development of the game. Although series producer, I don't know how much work you're actually adding as a producer, other than just coordinating things. But yeah, I'd much rather hear from him than some idol, Japanese idol that is just reading off a script and doesn't know anything. Moving on, the Gematsu articles. Tekken 8 has Jack 8 gameplay trailer if you want to check that out. Master Detective Archives Rain Code details the Kanai Ward Mystery Labyrinth Reasoning Deathmatch. Which, yeah. Seeing more screenshots of the game, and it definitely feels like there very well might be more of a game here. Here is a reasoning deathmatch, I guess. Spinning barrels in which you're spelling out the answer. The culprit used a what? Barrel to move the body? Or is this a reasoning deathmatch? It's still the same reasoning concepts as far as there are many games to solve the motives or the method of a murder as Danganronpa. The only difference now is that now these anime kids are not stuck in a school, and the characters don't inherently all have to be anime kids, even though I think a lot of them still will be. What would be funny is if it turns out Rain Code is what is outside of the school in Danganronpa, or was outside of the school at one point. Moving on, ReZero starting life in another world. Witcher's Resurrection has been announced for iOS and Android. They've really gotten crazy with the RE colon idea. ReZero being the anime that I have never watched, with the blue-haired and pink-haired maid characters. And one of the characters they really liked him, the other character, even though they're basically twins visually, they really hated because the personalities were drastically different. So like one of them really hated the protagonist, and at some point I think one of the two characters straight up disappears from the story and is erased from the story. As far as this character, though, I have no idea who this is as far as ReZero. Yeah. I haven't seen a character like that, so that may be new to the smartphone game. Let's see. Katsugo Danshi Elements with Emotions launches June 29th for the Switch in Japan, and this summer for iOS and Android. Is this a JRPG game or is it a visual novel? Simulation adventure is what they're calling it. We're going to see any actual gameplay. Seems like there's just a collection of anime characters. Seems like both male and female, so some kind of team-based RPG would be my guess. Maybe even a gacha character collector, but maybe not. Seems possible. But yeah, they're really not showing you a good explanation as far as how you would play this game. This is from Square Enix. For 3,300 yen, or $33. That'd be about $33. You get 4 Shikinkan characters. And then more characters are unlocked for $11. That seems really, really expensive. And I don't know how you sell DLC with characters on the Switch. And when you look at like the screenshot here, it definitely feels like there's a limited number of characters they actually would want to sell you. So it doesn't feel like a gacha game where it's just going to continuously add characters, although it might. This may just be the launch of having a bunch of characters, nearly 10 characters if I'm counting correctly here. Of course, when you take up this much space showing each character, you're barely getting the full face, and they just have all the eyes glowing, which maybe that's supposed to emphasize something. I don't know. Moving on, Love Live School Idol Festival School Idol Festival 2 Miracle Live launches April 15th in Japan. Global version currently in the works. As far as the smartphone game, Final Fantasy 16 World of Valisthea trailer and PAX East panel is available if you want to check that out on Gematsu. PAX East did happen, but there usually is not a lot of announcements around PAX events, and seems like that is very much the case today too. A game called Sin Duality has been officially titled as Sin Duality Echo of Ada, which is probably a game that they've announced and then I forgot about it. Notably here though, you have a very different gameplay trailer here, very, very different art style compared to this anime trailer art style. Although arguably the Resident Evil 4 kids cartoon animation trailers are still way out of left field compared to this. So let's see what the game trailer actually looks like. Yeah, it looks like it's gone 3D CGI with an anime kind of aesthetic to it, but would be more in line with a somewhat colorful Final Fantasy game than anything else. You've got this mech, and then there's somebody flying behind the mech a lot of times. My arms are still itching from being sunburned. It's ridiculous. Takes forever to heal. Wear sunscreen. Always wear sunscreen. This trailer really just highlights though the insanity of having an anime trailer if you're not going to actually do anything with it. Or if that's just not the way the game is going. So yeah, it's a 3D CGI hologram apparently controlling the robot. So this Ada. So yeah, why in the world have an anime trailer made other than you think the game won't sell without some kind of anime basic false advertisement? Unless perhaps I'm misunderstanding this. Maybe I'm misunderstanding this and there will be an anime series. The Sin Duality anime previously announced is titled Sin Duality Noir. Okay, so this is a video game actually based on an anime, so they are promoting two things at the same time, and there's my confusion. That makes a lot more sense, honestly. Of course, I've not heard of this anime, and I don't think it's out yet, so they are both trying to sell you to watch an anime and play a video game, and I've yet to see that succeed, so I'm somewhat skeptical there. Goblin Slayer Another Adventure Nightmare Feast has first details, trailers, and screenshot. Goblin Slayer in particular is an anime that in its first few episodes establishes it as being very dark and brutal. I'm not sure if it isn't one of those animes though that first couple of episodes catch your attention with something dark and brutal and then they get away from that, or if it is more of a Berserk type story where it is dark and brutal and gory and bloody all the time. Here's a Goblin Slayer. I don't think he ever takes his armor off. You're seeing a lot of other characters. Some of these do look familiar from the anime. Some of them, a lot of them don't. There's a lot of character designs that they've released here, and basically one screenshot of the actual gameplay. The goblins are shown in the first episode as being very evil and violent, so it kind of softens the blow that the Goblin Slayer is brutally violent and trying to kill, I think, every single goblin in his world. But none of that really works when you're seeing that this is just a top-down strategy placement RPG game. It's totally not the kind of game I'd want to play, and I don't think it's the type of game you really would want to use a character like Goblin Slayer in. If anything, this just feels like this is another instance in which you have an anime company licensing out an anime to a video game style that doesn't make sense at all. Goblin Slayer probably should be closer to a Dynasty Warriors type game or Warriors type game in which you have thousands of goblins attacking you and you're just button mashing over and over again to kill thousands of them. Like, that's probably your best bet as far as that kind of game or that kind of character. Let's see. This week's Japanese game releases, according to Komatsu: Winning Post 10, Tales of the Neon Sea, and more. I was having a real hard time figuring out that this was a horse. Like, I was thinking that this was part of a head, but that's actually the lower torso of a jockey, and this is a horse. There's just a lot of visual effects there. Let's see, what else do we have? We have a game called The Chant, available worldwide. I recall that being announced. I want to actually check that and see where the reviews are on that if I can. Insurgency, Sandstorm, MLB The Show 23, Serial Cleaners, Tales of the Neon Sea, and Winning Post 10. Some of these definitely were already available and are just getting released because the PS5 is more available, I guess, or the PS4 is more available. Of course, not a super long list of digital only launches. Sifu has been out as a non-digital only versions. Last of Us part 1. Open that too. Opening quite a few things here. Right, the chant. Can we... A horror action adventure game. Let's see. PC news. Let's go with the gameplay overview trailer. See if that gets us to a Steam link. This was November 3rd, 22nd, and so it was right around the time in which you would have not paid much attention. You would have been right after Halloween and starting to wind up towards a Black Friday sales. And somehow I've missed this completely. Was there a reason why I missed this? No, it's a single player game. It's rated very positively. Yeah, there's a whole cult aspect here to this. And weird magical stuff. Screenshots don't do it the best of services. But yeah. That is just another example, I think, of games not being seen by me. So I've really just boned this up. All my effort to potentially see every single game on Steam, and still somehow, either through me not starting early enough or through me having a macro that, or using a list from Steam itself that's not accurate enough. Like, there's really no reason why I shouldn't have seen The Last of Us Part 1, and maybe I definitely, almost certainly would have seen it. Interesting, you only get the Japanese interface / voice if you buy it in Japan. Interesting. Almost certainly I would have seen this, but I may have missed this. And that's coming out tomorrow. Moving on, Gematsu has 4 more articles. Shadows of Doubt launches in early access on April 24th. Oh, apparently, I don't know if this is true or not, but the people that have blue check marks on Twitter and are not paying the new Twitter Blue fee to maintain a blue check mark are going to lose their blue check mark on April 1st. April Fool's Day. Inherently, yeah, it does kind of make some sense that you would just start on the first day of the month. To if you have to start charging, you would pick the first day of whatever next month. April Fool's Day is an unfortunate thing, although inherently too, most people who do engage in April Fool's Day jokes and put out basically lies on Twitter would have had blue check marks and just been lying anyway. So if anything, it's probably a fine day. Doesn't have any real problem for being the day that people lose their verified status. Verified never really meant that you were a bastion of truth and a source that had not been disputed or anything like that. So yeah, I don't think it really matters that much. It has been in the past an increasingly better situation as far as April Fool's Day jokes anyways, people not really engaging with them online, and thank goodness, because it was always stupid particularly when you have this semi-permanent internet where information is kept, or you see posts days later and wouldn't be thinking about April Fool's Day. It was always dumb to put out false information. Like, ideally, we should all strive to have as much truth in the world, or at least on the internet, as possible. We don't probably need to talk about Playground Games establishing Lighthouse Games, or former studio head and founder of Playground Games, establishing Lighthouse Games. Now, calling themselves Lighthouse Games does imply something, doesn't it? That this might be a new company making a new BioShock, if perhaps the current next BioShock that 2K would have owned is closer to being released than we think, or has been completely scrapped, and this is a new company in charge of making the next BioShock. Now, I'm saying BioShock specifically, not the next Ken Levine game that looks a lot like BioShock and goes by a different name and is being made by a bit different company and a different team. Lighthouse in particular might imply that they are making something that will actually be called BioShock and published by 2K. Or it might mean nothing at all. Could just be an interesting name. This symbol doesn't really mean anything to me other than maybe atomic bonds, which, yeah, that could be anything, but that could also be a BioShock reference. A atom punk concept, or an atomic age where like nuclear technology and atomic fusion became a standard thing in a BioShock universe might be interesting. We saw something like that in Atomic Heart. So if you took Atomic Heart but put it in the United States and made a game like that, that might work. Or if you just tried to completely copy Atomic Heart and do it a little bit better, that might work. We already talked about The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom 10-minute gameplay video. Yeah, don't think we have anything else to say here. Unless I could actually click on this guy's name, and noticeably he does not have a clickable name. That would be the only way I suppose I could go through any other news articles that mention him on Gamatsu if I could click on his name, but obviously can't do that, so we'll move on. And then the final Gamatsu article for today says Samba de Amigo Party Central is going to feature Sonic the Hedgehog content, which, okay, it's probably a good idea. Sonic, at least as a cameo, is probably always a good idea. Couldn't imagine it goes terribly. There is definitely a question though, as far as just like Samba de Amigo. How is that really going to control on a regular controller? Wii Joy-Cons probably will control very well, but the idea is that you would be shaking. I think that's how this game plays, is that you're shaking these little castanets or whatever these shaker drum sticks are, and when you're talking a standard controller, it's just going to be like left stick, right stick input, which may not be that fun. Alright, moving on. Let's start going through games that came out on Steam. Now, there's no point now where you're safe from adult games until I get the message from YouTube to stop covering adult games. I don't know how I would really do that even. I guess inherently I would change the macro and make all the adult games open up at the end, and then I would end the stream and then continue recording after it, so that there would be like an after dark section, which, yeah, that could work. but then I would have to post that After Dark section out on some other platform, which at a certain point that just probably is not worth it. So yeah, none of those non-adult games are worth it, so we move over to an adult game that's probably not worth it. Universe Income, CUM. Seems like there's an alien with a lot of freckles. You don't see with these 3D CGI characters a lot of freckles in general. Character in some kind of skin suit. Alien characters all over the place with different kinds of artsy decorations to it. Yeah. With the 3D CGI characters in general, you tend to see completely blemish free, no moles, no beauty marks, no freckles, when that's just not really realistic. Even in porn, that often is not the case. These are basically, this is a furry, I assume, visual novel, but the furries are not furry animals as much as they are just aliens with tentacles on the head, one of them, and different ears and different designs of characters, and one with a big tail. There's one human girl who seems to be engaging with most of these other non-humanoid or non-humans, but humanoid-ish characters. It definitely comes off more as a girl-on-girl focus than any guy. And it's $3.27. None of the characters are presenting masculine, I guess. One of the characters does have male genitalia type. It says it's English full audio. Yeah, I guess if that's what you're into, the alien fetish does kind of exist. There is a small percentage, I think, of people that have alien insemination fetishes. I don't know if that fandom is big enough to justify an entire 3D CGI visual novel. There is something that is noticeable about this, in that the nice visual polish on the skin suit and the alien designs really puts to shame some other video games. Like, a lot of these alien models, you throw some clothes on them, they would work better than a lot of aliens we see in non-adult video games. Moving on, though. Metal War doesn't look like anything. G-Verse doesn't look visually polished enough. It really is just night and day as far as the modeling here. And you just have these really, really ugly low polygon 3D models. And maybe there is some balance there that if you're not really good at optimizing, you have to lower the visuals by a ton so you can have trees in an open world survival game, whereas 3D pre-rendered CGI visual novel scenes don't take any extra processing. This character doesn't really seem like they fit in that universe. Of course, it doesn't really explain the low pixel count games like this. But yeah, even when you have, like, what isn't in the adult section, visual novels here, you see that there's a level of focus on the visuals that are not equal to what you see as far as the low effort other kinds of games. Visual novel, which you have the role of the trusted administrator of a small provincial hotel. There are many different rumors about the hotel, but sooner or later, even secrets turn into a routine. So it seems like at some point you're ghost hunting. Like, I don't think ghost hunting was such a boring activity. But you're running the hotel, so somebody else is like ghost hunting. It's a weird story to set as your explanation. And it seems like it's a little repetitive in the backgrounds, but there might be something to this. I kind of like this art style because it definitely screams, hey, we're 10-20% being infected, we're being inspired by anime, but we're actually getting away from like the moe art style. Here you have a very tall character taking up the full length, and you're showing like a lot of their body instead of zooming in a little bit more to show them as taller. Definitely you're going for a feeling that this is supposed to be a 30-year-old girl, not a Japanese person who may be 30 that looks like they're 18. It's not even really going for the kawaii art style, cutesy art style. There's very basic, generic Western clothing, not trying to match things, no crazy logos, no belts, no Final Fantasy nonsense, no armbands or symbols, generic blonde hair. It all feels fairly natural. Sure, this guy is a little bit weirder looking, but still natural color tones. Not super bright, not super cartoony. This screenshot I think is a little unfortunate because it almost implies, if you didn't read the text here, it almost implies that they're setting up for a porn shoot, which, I bet that happens in hotels quite a bit, is that people think they can get away with shooting porn in hotel rooms, and they probably legally are not safe for a hotel to allow porn to be shot in a hotel room. Plus, it probably would make less noise and a huge amount of mess. Like, even if you were just an independent movie maker making a shooting movie in a hotel room, kind of makes some sense, but probably is something hotels would fight against quite a bit. Here we have another visual novel. And the problem here with these visual novels is that I should make YouTube shorts around them, because you're just never going to be able to know if any of them are quality enough for the fandoms of visual novel fans, which obviously there is a massive fandom on Steam for as many as are actually released. I'm obviously not part of that fandom, so I'm trying to do my best to try and curate a product that I don't really understand. Evil Superhero VR. This is obviously just Homelander from The Boys. If this was visually polished a little bit more and less asset flippy, I might consider the idea of you're flying around as this evil superhero that is using his laser eye beams to shoot down planes and shoot down people. Moving on. Homelander, so far as the episodes I think that have been released, didn't shoot down a plane, but he did get sent on a mission to save people on a plane, and then screwed up and couldn't save everybody on the plane, and didn't want to look like a failure, so he left everybody, including the women and children, on the plane to die. So, yeah. I think he has laser beamed at least somebody in the face that was taunting him. And we really are not getting a lot of even questionable games today. These are all total garbage. Yeah. This is interesting. You have a chat system, and then you have like gender symbols. In modern today, it really does not make any sense at all to have gender symbols. Like, that seems crazy. Also, it seems like it's nothing of a game, so move on. Day at the Races. Probably not the kind of game most people want to play, but it is almost certainly the kind of game that should be highlighted in a YouTube short for the fans that are out there. And I guess that really is what the YouTube shorts are trying to address, is to turn a lot of people who may only play something like Call of Duty into a more diverse gamer who might try some of these other kinds of games, or help people who already enjoy those types of games find more games like that. Try to be a better Steam Discovery than Steam Discovery is, because let's face it, Steam Discovery is not something I think people engage with at a high level. Let's see if this is an adult game. This is probably one of these Chinese faux porns, I guess might be a great way of describing it. Yep. That's exactly what it is. So you have this game called Tickling Girls, and you have these, frankly, at this point, ugly Chinese models that need to be improved, and they're just tickling each other. Which at a certain level, I guess the question is tickling ever not sexual? Like, sure, if you're a parent tickling a child, hopefully it's not sexual at that point, but at the core of it, I think the ticklishness of humans has become so biologically connected to a intimate reaction that it is very much down the path of being romantic and sexual. I saw somewhere on Facebook or something, so take this as probably not true, that ticklishness is designed to tell you to protect your organs. That being said, then why are the bottom of people's feet ticklish? I've also seen that there are nerve endings like at the bottom of your feet that are definitely close to the nerve endings of the groin, as they just kind of go up the same way towards your spinal column. So tickling a foot is just a step away from tickling a groin. But in general, there is this intimacy overall that if you're touching someone, particularly in Asian countries, that is a high level of intimacy. And that's what definitely they're focusing on here, is that there's this implication of something. Here you can even see it in the video. It's just bouncing back and forth. If anything, this English and Chinese language, I doubt it really supports English that much, really just highlights where censorship goes crazy and goes wrong and messes with people's heads more. The blurring of porn in Japanese media leads to the hentai and Japanese live action porn getting more and more fetishized and more extreme, because they can't just show what would be natural missionary style sex, or just something more simplistic. And China's censorship is taking it a step further than even just blurring genitalia to outright banning porn, to the point where they're making faux porns around tickling. And certainly there's creepy tickling type videos on YouTube of parents tickling kids, or which comes off as very possibly pandering towards pedophiles as to why you would put those videos online. Although parents are also crazy. They don't think about what they post half the time with their kids. And frankly, it should just be close to illegal, if not completely illegal, to post videos of even your own kid online. If I was running YouTube, I'd definitely put in that rule. I'd say you cannot post videos of any real kids ever, for any reason. We don't want kids on this platform for any reason whatsoever. It's a crazy blanket rule, but it's a rule you could enforce very easily, and it's a rule people would complain about, but not that much. Moving on. Yeah, even when we have like a bad Chinese tickling game, though, there's more to say with that than there is with anything else. This looks like this is an escape room game that's not particularly nicely animated, so I'm gonna have to say no to that. Kind of an inconsistent animation style between these two, which are really badly drawn, and this one, which is slightly better drawn. Super Passport Bros. Here we have an anime girl on the title, and then I assume this is a shirtless guy in just an asset flip garbage open world environment. Yeah, absolute bottom of the barrel garbage, and they're asking $14.99 for it. And they're saying that's relevant somehow to Mirror's Edge Catalyst and A Hat in Time, which, yeah, the audacity of saying that my YouTube shorts might be better than the recommendation on Steam really gets highlighted when you see how bad the recommendation algorithm is for brand new games. This one claiming to be a precision platformer and 3D platformer, thus Mirror's Edge Catalyst, and an adventure game, probably putting A Hat in Time on the list. Secret Life of Dorian Pink. Is this supposed to be connected to Dorian Gray in some way? Maybe. This guy's shaving chest hair. Okay, what? I have no idea what this game is. Choices Matter, narrative RPG, an alternate universe where a picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde, save your boyfriend Basil from the devil and making questionable choices, gaining allies, making donuts explode. I feel like this is just all over the place. I'm going to give this a follow, but I'm not going to give it a YouTube short because this really is in that range of this could be an amazingly weird avant-garde art thing, or this could just be total troll ridiculousness. And if there's one kind of game I could potentially wait for not highlight, it would be total ridiculousness. Now, inherently that is unfair, because if this game does turn out to be amazingly good, it won't get the YouTube shorts. Architecture Zeitgeist is a project that aims to popularize and make architectural education accessible. The game consists of 3D tours in which the player will be able to visit and interact in real time with iconic architectural projects. Okay. So I'd have to assume that this is mostly a walking simulator through probably 3D pictures of a real world environment. That being said, I also don't really recognize architectural places, and why would I? Like, there's a couple of houses that are somewhat recognizable, maybe 2 or 3 that I know as far as architecture. And when you say the word architecture, you pretty much mean the buildings. It's not staging the house as much. So it's really the walls and the layouts of the walls, and maybe the doors and the framings. It's not the tables, the desks, and the other elements here that they're really focusing on. That's more decoration, that's more staging. There's a slight line drawn between like a cabinet that is semi-permanent installed versus a chair that could be moved at any point. Yeah, I definitely don't think that there's enough story here or enough visuals here to justify $5.99 as a price. Arguably, I'm not even sure I believe that House Flipper has enough houses. And then arena renovation is taking the idea of House Flipper and putting it in an arena. I've been using Viscera Cleanup Crew as a description of games where you run around cleaning, but honestly, House Flipper, I guess at this point, has that element and more. So, yeah. But it also is not realistic to make 5 different games with 5 different types of buildings when really House Flipper should just have arena DLC at best that adds a bunch of arenas and adds more 3D models. Inherently, you're paying for DLC for just more 3D models of decorations and things you could put in places, whereas it would make a lot more sense if it was more in line with the cell phone app I have, in which they should have affiliate links to actual products, so you could actually buy this cabinetry from IKEA and you would get affiliate links from buying those products via IKEA via an app. I don't know how many people really would do that, but like that would be a nicer way to fund it. It would also be a nicer way to keep companies like IKEA making 3D models and giving you 3D models in updates for your software. Whereas a game like House Flipper or Arena Renovation here is likely going to have a set amount of items, and once those items have been added, you won't get any more. You'll have to wait for a long time before you get an update, where ideally it would just be instantaneous updates. Stories from the Outbreak there looked good enough. King Mini, I'll even give that a chance. I don't want to make a lot of decisions today, although I really could make a lot of decisions today. We really breezed through today's stream too, and that's nice. Like, we've been going for 3 hours, but it to me has felt like it's been 2.5 hours, 2 hours. Let's see, 9 Years of Shadows has come out. That was already on the fall list. Super Uriel doesn't look like anything. And Deathkeep doesn't look like anything. So that's all the games that came out on Steam. Not a lot of adult games over the weekend. It does sometimes still feel like adult games come and go. Did we see any furry games? Well, technically the Alien one I would say is probably a furry game. Did we see a standard adult game, 3D CGI type game? Otherwise, I don't think we did. I think we really only saw that one adult game, so we didn't see any flat 2D anime style adult games either. So, kind of a low number, but I imagine we'll come back on Wednesday and we'll have a high number of adult games. It ebbs and flows enough that I can't make any real statement that it feels like there's any real censorship or bundling happening here. Not anything that I can put my finger on, at least. Alright, so we'll go through the GameDeveloper.com articles. Meta revives the Oculus brand for third-party game publishing. We had pretty much already covered that. And yeah, at the end of these streams, we're not going to do Duel Live presentations or scrolling down the Twitter feed, so if there is new news, we'll talk about it on Wednesday. A UK regulator no longer thinks Microsoft is buying Activision Blizzard to make Call of Duty exclusive. This is a different headline of saying the same thing, that they narrowed their scope of concerns, and that they're now convinced Call of Duty won't become an Xbox exclusive, which eventually it might very well become an exclusive. They can't say for certainty that 100 years down the line it doesn't become an exclusive. That's not even really the question to ask. The question to ask is, would Call of Duty becoming an exclusive the second that the merger acquires significantly hurt Sony to the point, or not even hurt Sony, it's not about Sony versus Microsoft. Would it hurt the UK citizens in their interest if it was exclusive? Would you pay more for Call of Duty, or would you have to buy another console because you only had a PlayStation, or would the quality of the game go down? That's really where their concern should be. And at a certain point, if like 10 years down the line it did become an exclusive, is that 10 years more than enough time to give Sony to make a competitor? Arguably, Microsoft is saying yes, it is. And yeah, it probably is. Like, it's always crazy to potentially preach pro merger, though. Like, particularly in the UK and the Europe, the idea of just stopping the merger because it's a merger still has some value. In the United States, that nobody's gonna succeed with that argument. But yeah, probably would be better if we had smaller video game companies instead of one major Microsoft conglomerate. But that's not the way things are going, and that's not likely to happen. It would be amazing if it did, if overnight laws were passed to chop and break apart companies. We did that with AT&T, or what was it? AT&T Bell South was turned into 8 smaller, what they called Baby Bell telephone companies, and then they slowly allowed them to merge back together into not one giant cell phone phone company, but 2 to 4 giant phone companies. But yeah, it definitely is a case that one administration was anti-monopolies and big business, and then several other administrations were pro big business and monopolies and undid what the previous administration had done. But it took a while, and we're probably better off now than we would have been had we let AT&T Bell South just been a monopoly this whole time. Moving on, we've got some flawless cleanup. This one looks a little too pixely for its own good. Demons of Asterborg. Like, there's certainly just a level here where something that looks like an NES game that actually isn't an NES game just isn't going to have enough relevancy to me to make me want to play it. There's a gimmick here where he turns into a spider-like creature. But yeah, definitely just doesn't feel polished enough to quite make it. $17.99 is actually pretty expensive too. The next game must have been removed. Inherently, that is going to be an issue. I'm going to have to start cleaning up games that have been removed from Steam for one reason or another. Demon Hunter. The idea of giving something more time also potentially needs to be re-evaluated. Like, we're in the 3rd month right now, about to go into the 4th month of 2023. This came out at the beginning of the 10th month of 2022. So talking 5, maybe 6 months that this game has been out. Generally speaking, I think if it's been more than a month or 2, I need to start just considering that the launch window of a game, and when the launch window of a game has passed and there's only 5 user reviews, it is probably valuable to just consider it an irrelevant game compared to something like this that has 103 reviews. Let's see, is this a single player game? Yes, it is. It's very positive, so it meets that requirement. Not 100% sure what this game actually is, though. But I guess I just don't care enough. They say it's a precise platformer collectathon. Then Demon Turf is... Seems like there's two games that look almost exactly the same. Is it from the same person? Or is it the same game by two different names? Steam really shouldn't allow you to do that. Regardless, it's positively reviewed, so we'll put that on the wish list. Demon Slayer Kimetsu no Yabai probably did not need to be on the wish list, on the fall list at all. It could have just been put on the wish list. I'm not seeing any negative response on that. That being said, by the time I actually got around to playing this, Demon Slayer may not be that popular anymore. I'm not sure it's going to have that long running thing to it. And this is the Hinokami Chronicles, which seems like this is the Demon Slayer series set in the past that they started with, versus the Demon Slayer series where they start to get older and are in more modern times. If my understanding of it is correct, which it very possibly isn't. Demon Purge Saga is from 2020. And yeah, there's not enough here to justify this. A match 3 game where you're playing as a priest purging demons, I guess, out of things. It's an interesting gimmick, certainly, but visuals aren't quite polished enough and just not relevant enough. Demon Blast is from 2020. A first-person shooter Doom clone, it looks like. Still in early access. Certainly too at this point, like giving extra information as far as saying something is early access and then really it being abandoned. I guess I could also use this as a reference that if this hasn't been updated for 849 days, then we can assume it is abandoned versus being in early access, because there is this assumption that an early access game that was truly being worked on would have more updates. But yeah, mostly this is going to boil down to a case of I'm no longer giving people benefits of the doubt because of the pandemic, or giving them extra time because of the pandemic. Some kind of card-based strategy placement game. Here you have a much better example of something that was updated seemingly on 25 days ago. I'm just going to say yes to this because it is very positive. This doesn't 100% look like a game I'd want to play, but I might give it a chance. It definitely seems like we're just getting duplicates of some of these listings. I don't know where that's coming from. Then 9 Years Shadows was, I think, the last game we looked at. Yeah. Alright, well, that's going to be it for this stream. Thanks to Sniper Ranger for swinging by at the beginning. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos because that helps me with YouTube. If you want a friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a bunch of links down below. There is also a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and get me a game off my wish list. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.